Yeah, so Wildermyth is really good. It's $25, which I think might be a little overpriced, personally. Um, and that's not to say it's a bad game, but there's loops in it where um, like you'll play the same stage over and over again, and that can kind of get tedious and a little lame. The combat can kind of get, once you kind of get it down, it's kind of the same thing every time, kind of. And again, these are just my criticisms. There's a lot of pros to the game as well. I think I've got like 10 hours into it, and I've had a lot of fun with it up to this point. I think I'm starting the third chapter. That's what it is. Or
Okay.
the third or not the third chapter, but the third campaign. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and like everything kind of accumulates, which is really cool. So like you get crafting materials and you can craft stuff for your people. The retirement thing, I'm still kind of getting used to, because you gotta kind of time things out, because in Wildermyth, like you get these characters and then you start equipping them and like spending resources on them, and they start getting really good, and then they get old, and then you have to retire them. So you gotta kind of pace it, so your newer, younger characters start getting some of the good equipment and becoming more powerful. So that way you have someone to replace the old guys once they go. But yeah, like the character development is really cool. Like you kind of become attached to the characters a little bit, some of them. Like every once in a while you get a character that fits their role perfectly, and they kind of act like the way that you'd want them to act in the game, like in the dialogue. And it's like, wow, I really like this character. And then it's like, oh, well, this character's retiring at the end of this chapter. It's like, God damn it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of weird for me. I've never really played a tactics game where that's been something that, you've had to deal with. But I guess it keeps things fresh. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the third campaign that goes up to like 5 chapters, and you get a little more feel for that then too, because you really go through like 2 life generations or whatever, like 2 full ones.
Oh, I noticed that, like going through the first several 2 chapters, that the second campaign was much longer and it had like, yeah, more time.
Yeah, I think it's yeah. And so, I think the third one steps it up another notch. And yeah, I'd say too, I do agree. Like, I think the other campaigns, I think too, use different tile sets depending on the areas you're at, based on the 5 monster types or whatever. But I do say they could have a few more level layouts. Like they have a good amount of assets in each of those, so they could definitely play around with that a little more. Change things up like that. I do kind of like some of the missions where it's like you have to run from this place or before you get swarmed by monsters, and so they change things up a little bit like that.
Yeah, there's also like escort missions that can be challenging and fun, where they just keep on sending swarms of enemies at you, and you gotta try to finagle your way past them to get to an area. There's a lot of things that they've done right, and I mean, the way it stands right now, I'd probably give it like a 7.5 out of 10, or maybe even 8 out of 10. But I feel like they still have some work to do with making it feel not as much of a game loop where everything is kind of the same. I don't know how to phrase that better, but for $25, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think it's more of like a $15 game, maybe $20 game, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I disagree. I think you try it on a harder difficulty too, because I think the way the battles worked out for me were always pretty interesting. Because there's a lot of enemy types, and they do have a lot of different abilities. I guess part of the problem for me though does come down to the fact that your characters aren't getting. Like, you get to, once you level up or whatever, they get the meta level up, you can choose like a new ability or upgrade an ability. And those can kind of change and make characters feel different. But you don't have enough of those levers that really change the way a character plays, I guess. Like, I mean, you could take like a ranger and make him like a dagger wielding and use the silk step and go more into paths like that, but you are kind of at the mercy of RNG at that part as well. So.
Yeah, you know, maybe I'll try turning up the difficulty. You might be right about that. But I don't know if you do this, but I like to save a lot, you know? So, like, I'll save before I initiate a battle. That way, if, like, my favorite character dies, I can just reload. Do you do that as well?
Scum. No. I haven't so far. I don't think I have. And yet, I don't even actually play on the Iron Man difficulty, but I think that's the better way to play, for sure.
And that's the hardest difficulty?
No, it's not even a difficulty.
Oh.
It's just a permadeath. Yeah. You can't save. It saves automatically every time. And I think that's the way it should be played.
Yeah, that would be the most legit way to do it, for sure. But I guess, now that I've learned how to play it well, maybe it'd be worthwhile to, like, go back and do that, play it, and accept the sacrifices. Because
well, and I think too, even after I think maybe there's like 5 story campaign, but even after those, the game is still fun playing like the 5, doing the different size generic campaigns, which are randomly generated, or more randomly generated. So I definitely some fun to be found in that. There's quite a bit of fun. I definitely think it's worth $25, hands down. But if you're on the fence, just wait for a sale and grab it. And it should be even more updated by then too.
Yeah, well, Halloween's coming up, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it'll be on sale then. Yeah, as far as tactics games goes, I love tactics games, and I haven't gotten to play a good tactics game since, I don't know, Final Fantasy Tactics, like, back in 1990 something.
Yeah.
No, it was probably in the 2000s, but it was a while ago. It was like a decade ago that I played a good Final Fantasy or tactics game.
You know what? Well, actually, there is modding for it too. But one thing, just to cut you off real quick, but one thing I was thinking is one thing you could do is add prestige classes, which I bet you could do with the I bet they'll have mods for something like that, maybe. Because that would really help taking the 3 base classes and then separating them out more. I think that would help go a long way with differentiating that loop a little bit, as you're saying. And just having a little more selection, being like, instead of always having 2 warriors, 2 archers, and a mage, you'd have, a barbarian and a knight, and then I could either have, the blood mage or this other type of mage, or do I want the stealthy ranger, sword ranger, or do I want the archer ranger? So I think that would probably help.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it. It's really good the way it is, It
is. It's very good.
But like every game, there's always room for improvement, so it's never a bad thing to hypothesize what could be.